Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 23rd, 2018 special UK edition of the Intuit Developer Friday. It is not morning Hangout. We are actually in London today. Jared's joining us if he wants to give a wave, and you might see a double-decker bus go by just to prove we're in London during the Hangout today. I'm David Leary. I'm the Global Small Business Ecosystem Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at David Leary. Today's guest, Jared Keneally. He's the Director of Developer Relations at Intuit. You can follow him at Jared Keneally. He's going to come on and discuss all the things you can do with the QuickBooks API for any of you, those of you hackers that are going to be attending the Small Biz Hack. Jared, you might want to lean in a little bit because you're just a shadow. There you go. Perfect. And give me a couple of slides here to go through. As a reminder, if you guys have any general chats, just use the chat panel. If you have any specific Q&A today, please use the Q&A panel, and I will get those questions out to Jared. So a couple of reminders. Again, for the third year in a row, we are going to do the $100,000 Small Business App Showdown. You have 173 days left to get your app published, get it live on apps.com, and officially enter the contest. Because of the tech review, security review, etc., don't wait till August 14th to submit to do this. I'd be shooting for maybe a July 1st. So that gives you enough time to get through all the review process and ensure that you're live and ready to go for the public voting phase of the contest. Another announcement, QuickBooks Connect, the big, huge conference for the QuickBooks ecosystem. So we'll have developers, small business owners, accountants, resellers, anybody involved in the QuickBooks ecosystem will all be in San Jose, November 5th through 7th. So I suggest you mark this out on your calendar and start making plans now. And then next week, we are actually, this is the reason we are in London. We are here for the QuickBooks Connect in London. It takes place next Tuesday and Wednesday. Coincidentally, I just did a screenshot quickly of the website. These three guys that are on here, this is Arbitru. Arbitru came to our hackathon last year, and as of this week, just published the first draft. So those of you that are coming to the hackathon, definitely you could be the next Arbitru. And speaking of the hackathon, those of you who haven't registered yet, there's probably still a couple seats available. You can go to smallbizhacklondon.com. We're actually at the venue at CodeNode. That's a screenshot of it. We're kind of backstage, so you get to see how cool it looks. But it's a great venue for hackathons. It's I'd say it's kind of like a wedding hall or a rental space just for tech events. So it's really, really a cool type place. So you can still register to be here. And tomorrow morning, we will kick off the hackathon. So for those of you that are in the London area and have nothing to do this weekend, please come on by. And just this event and all the other events we're doing, you can always find those on the developer site. So it's developer.intuit.com/hub/events. And you can find this hackathons, any conferences we're going to, other Hangouts. They're all available on that site. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing here. And stop sharing. Perfect. Got it. And Jared, welcome to the Hangout.
Thanks.
How are you liking London so far?
So far, so good. Weather's been pretty chilly, but better than rain.
Perfect.
CodeNode's getting set up right now for the event. The crew's out there putting up a big, huge stage, setting up all the lights. It's actually a pretty big production out there.
Awesome. And I understand you have a couple things to show, pretty much let everybody know, like, A, what prize you're going to give out at the hackathon, how they sign up to get their developer account set up, what the APIs that are available to build on for the hackathon, and anything else you feel like you need to cover. So as a reminder, everybody, if you have any questions, please use the chat panel. Or if you're watching on Facebook Live, put in the comments and I'll moderate those and let Jared know if you have any questions.
All right, thanks. So just wanted to start off with a little intro to what QuickBooks Online is. Today, QuickBooks Online is the #1 small business accounting software in the world. And through the Intuit Developer Group, we make those APIs available to developers just like you. And these hackathons are great opportunities for you to show up, network with Intuit, network with lots of other developers, and then build a small business application that integrates either with our APIs or with any other of our partner APIs to solve a small business problem. And so I'll just take you through a little bit of some of the tools and some of the developer experience that we have to get you started, show you how simple it is to actually get going, get a sandbox, and then find all the things you need to actually build an integration. And as David mentioned, if you so choose, we also have a marketplace where you can sell those applications if you publish, and then enter into our $100,000 App Showdown contest if you publish in the next year. So I'll start off with going to developer.intuit.com, and we have a great getting started guide for you, and it's just 4 easy steps. So you can just start by creating your developer account. As you can see, I already have mine created. You can make your first API request with our API Explorer. And so what the API Explorer is it's a built-in tool. It's built right into our developer portal, and you can test out every single one of our API calls against a QuickBooks Online sandbox that we provision for you. So within just a minute of logging into our portal, you can try out every single API call and see what the request and response are. There's a little getting started video right here, which shows you just how to do a basic query of all the customers out of QuickBooks Online from your sandbox. You can check out what the response is, and you can actually see all the different entities that we make available to you to try out. And you can always connect your API Explorer to a real QuickBooks Online company in production. You can connect it to multiple QuickBooks Online sandboxes, either a US or a UK or a Canadian edition of QBO. And once you've done that and you just kind of get an idea of the lay of the land, checked out some of the requests and response, how it roughly works, you can head on to a next step, which is just to create an application. And really, when all an app is a set of metadata, which contains your app name, which contains a few simple settings, and what you get is a set of OAuth 2 tokens. And with those OAuth tokens, you can authorize and get access to make API calls against your QuickBooks Online sandbox. And then ultimately, when you get your production keys, you can make those calls against a production QuickBooks Online company.
Hey, Jared, can you control zoom? Just
sure.
Make it a little bit bigger. That's a little bit better.
A little better?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll show you actually how easy it is to create your first app, and then we can go and check out some of the API requests from the API Explorer, and then I can kind of walk through a bunch of the tools that we have available. So once you're logged in, you head over to My Apps. Mine takes a few minutes to load because I have way too many apps. You can start by clicking Create a New App, and then you can select your APIs and just start coding. So I'll pick the accounting. We also have payment APIs that are available to you as well.
And tomorrow at the hackathon, can people code on either, or are they limited to just one or the other?
No, they can absolutely use any API. The entire theme of the small business hack is just to build a small business solution that solves a business time or money. So you can use our APIs, you can use our sponsor APIs, or you don't have to use any API at all if you have a great idea that does solve a small business solution.
And it looks like the double-decker bus did pull us. This proves we're truly in London. We're not faking this.
That's right. So as you can see, all I had to do is click Create My App, and it's already created. I have a QuickBooks Online sandbox automatically provisioned for me, and I have access to that via OAuth 2 keys. So you can see here I've got my app token, my consumer key, and my consumer secret, and my sandbox. And so I have a bunch of different sandboxes as well. But as soon as you log into our developer portal, it'll automatically get created for you, and you'll be all set to start making API calls against it.
So I have keys for my sandbox, and then I have keys for production.
Exactly. So your development keys connect to your development sandbox, and your production keys connect to actual QBO production companies. You can see here it's sort of grayed out a little bit until you actually provide a privacy policy URL. Once you do that, then you're able to access that. And that's just because those privacy policy URLs show up in the authorized dialog. So we just want to make sure that those are there. So we can take a look at some of the settings here. You can obviously change the name of your app. You can enter your terms of service links. Over here, you can actually accept connections. And by accept connections, it just means if the QBO user is using a language version or a country version of QBO in any one of these particular countries, including globally, you can choose to accept it. But if your app only works in the United Kingdom, or you want to limit your customers to just United Kingdom QBO users, you can absolutely uncheck everything except for the United Kingdom, and that will limit the the people who can connect and the types of companies that connect to just UK. Additionally, you can choose to provide Intuit single sign-on or not. So we provide single sign-on through OpenID. And the one thing that really is a benefit to your customers if you do choose to provide single sign-on is the seamless experience for your customer. So being able to allow a customer to click log in with their existing Intuit developer or Intuit QuickBooks credentials and then automatically log into your application actually increases your conversion rate and makes it a lot easier for your customers to just jump in and get started with your application. And then lastly here is your app QuickBooks Online Accountant Ready. There's also a QuickBooks Online Accountant version of the product, and it's for accountants, and that's how they manage their clients. And you can actually make your app available to all those QuickBooks Online accountants if you're ready to do it. So let's move on to a couple other aspects of your app. In addition to the keys and the settings that you can take a look at, you can also set up your webhooks. And what webhooks do is it will automatically send you an event notification if something changes in that QuickBooks Online account. So let's just say your company gets a new customer. As soon as there's a new customer added, it will send you an event notification to your endpoint, and you can then take action based on that. You can sync the data to your side, you can query the data, you can get the new customer, keep all the data up to sync. So that's about as easy as it is to get started, get that app created, and now I'll take you over to some of our tools. Start with the API Explorer.
And the API Explorer is connected to your sandbox?
Yep, the API Explorer can connect to your sandbox, or it can connect to a QuickBooks Online production company.
Oh, it can do both.
And I actually have a mixture of both in here,
Okay.
but I'll connect to this particular one, which is a sandbox for now. And so we can head over to customer, and let's just try a query. All right, so I did a simple query, which is select star from customer. And as you can see, it returns all the customers that I have in my sandbox. And I can show you exactly what that looks like from inside the sandbox itself. So we'll head over to manage sandboxes. Here's my company that I was in. We'll jump into it. And we'll jump into the customers. And as you can see, your sandbox will come with all this sample data, and it's just to help you get started and understand what the data looks like when it's inside of here. And so here's my list of customers in my sandbox. And then here is a query against that sandbox. And so you can see it's the exact same list of customers. And you can try that out with any of the entities that we provide from the API. There's also references to all the different settings. There's also the reporting APIs as well, which is a full set of reports. Not everything that exists inside the product, but many of the reports that you'll find inside QBO, you can also call through the API Explorer. All right, so that's kind of a quick and simple explanation of the API Explorer, but it's also a great debugging tool. If for some reason your query is not working as you expect, or you want to see what pieces of data are returned, you can always come in here and execute your query and see exactly what it looks like.
And I think a lot of developers can use it to create their payloads, right? Instead of having to create it from scratch, you could come here, make the request, get your payload, and then use that in your code, right?
You can. That's one way to do it. Definitely the preferred way would be for you to go and check out our tools and use one of our SDKs.
SDK.
The SDKs will provide you with everything you need to do for OAuth, for OpenID, and then for making the API calls with the authorization. Of course, you can roll your own, but the SDK is just going to make your life a lot easier. It's really simple to get them running. We have 6 different SDKs in Java, PHP, .NET, Python, Code Node, I'm thinking that, Node.js, and I think there's a few other open source libraries as well. And then in addition to that, we have sample code for every CRUD operation that we have that you can see here. We have those available for all the APIs as well, and I can show you that.
Okay.
So this is our landing page on GitHub, and you can see here we have 3 officially supported SDKs. And when I say officially, I mean they are officially supported by Intuit, but we also support many other SDKs that are provided by the community, by the open source community. And so this is just a real simple way to kind of see all the things that we have available. So if you want just a basic sample for OAuth 2, we have these existing examples here in pretty much all the different kinds of languages. Anything you could think of, we pretty much have it. So all the way to Go, which is brand new. Pretty simple explanation here on just getting up and going with OAuth 2. Everything you need to just try it out and get it going. Also, if for some reason you still have an older app, you can definitely use OAuth 1 as well. But we are totally moving to OAuth 2, and we're in the middle of actually migrating all of the developers over to OAuth 2. There's also some webhook samples in Java, .NET, and Node. You can check these out as well. It's real simple, bare bones examples about how to actually handle an event that's sent from our platform to your app. And then we have CRUD samples, like I mentioned before. We have CRUD for every single entity that our API provides in these 3 different languages for the SDKs. So you can pretty much find an example of anything you could possibly want to do. We also have a payment API as well, in addition to QuickBooks Online. We have a bunch of samples there. And then we have a couple of full-blown applications that are kind of giving you an idea of what it would look like to have a full application up and running. Kind of the entire user experience, the setup, the sign-in, how you would manage it, how you would store tokens. It kind of gives you a good example of how to do all of that. And then lastly, we have other samples. So there's tons of other open source developer samples that you can find here. All right, let's head back over to developer, and we'll take a look at some of the other tools. So if you're not familiar with Postman, Postman is an amazing HTTP client that lets you test out the APIs. And what we've done is created a Postman collection specifically for QuickBooks Online APIs and for our payment APIs. We also have a set of smaller collections that teach you how to do basic accounting concepts. So if you want to know how to create an invoice inside of QuickBooks, you can look at the Postman collection, and it will tell you every single API that you need to call in order to actually create that. And there's lots of different versions of Postman, so make sure you kind of keep it updated. But follow these instructions. It'll just take you a couple minutes to get it set up. It supports OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. You can download our collection, and within a few minutes, you can be testing this out using Postman. And Postman's a great tool. Like I said, it provides all those accounting concepts for you, so it really shows you how to make the API calls, which sequence of calls you need to make, and get a really good example of how this is all going to work, how it's all going to look before you even start writing code. So you can pretty much check out exactly end-to-end how your app would work, and you won't even need to write any code yet.
And remember my tour of Postman correctly, so it's worth the developer's time, because if you set up Postman for the QuickBooks APIs and you're using it for that, you might come across some other APIs that are also using Postman one day, and it's just real super efficient for you to scale with that.
Absolutely. And if you can use Postman for any REST-based or SOAP-based API, and we come out with new collections and updates to the collections all the time, and you can download those collections and get going. And for any other APIs that you happen to be using, you can use it all in the same tool as well. So it's a great tool, and using our collection is just a real simple way to get acquainted with our APIs. All right, what else can we talk about? So another tool that we have is our OAuth Sandbox, or OAuth Playground. And what this does, it lets you just walk through the authorization flow of an OAuth flow and get your keys. And it's just helps you get going really quickly. You don't have to, oh, you know why? Because I'm actually on OAuth 1. So this playground will actually walk you through getting the authorization code and all the steps that your application would have to go through in order to get the authorization code and then get your keys to make API calls. And this is not a substitute for you writing code. It's actually just to help you get started and going really quickly. Once you build out your application, our SDKs provide all the libraries you need to implement all of this. But this is just so you can walk through it live while you're in the site and get anything that you need.
So you'd use this obviously for the hackathon this weekend.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just a fast thing to use the playground, get your keys and your tokens, and then. But if you ever build your real app, you'll actually go and build the proper workflows.
Exactly. So while you're at the hackathon, this is just a quick and dirty way to get your keys without writing any code. You can get your keys in just a couple minutes, and then you can start writing your code. You can make the API calls. Everything will work perfectly fine. You can also download the SDK and then run through the authorization flow as well. But this is just a really quick way to get started. And then lastly, we have our documentation. So our docs are structured as getting started, building your application, and then going live. And you can find lots of different tutorials, how to create an invoice, how to manage some of the accounting concepts that you'll need to know in order to build your application. And this included in there is some videos, some training from QuickBooks Online, everything you need to know about accounting, which is actually pretty daunting to some developers. If you don't understand accounting, it becomes pretty difficult to actually write the code against it. So we try and provide a lot of tutorials around common themes that we see. So custom fields, attaching images and things like that are things lots of people are doing. So we have tutorials on exactly how to do that. You can also find the documentation on webhooks, on SDKs, on everything about authorization through OAuth or single sign-on through OpenID, details on your sandbox, and then some troubleshooting tips, all inside of the build. And then once you're completed with building your application, you can click over to Go Live. Now, for the purpose of the hackathon, you really don't need to go to this step. You can build your entire app against the sandbox and demo it, live at real time, no problems. But if you actually wanted to get to the point where you connect to a production QBO company, then you have to follow the steps for going live with your production keys. Just a few steps to get your production access keys. And once you're done, and you have access to it. And then the rest of the information here is all about publishing your app on the App Store. It's a pretty long process to get onto our App Store. Nothing you would want to worry about while you're at the hackathon, but it's just kind of good to know. In the case of Arbitru, they were here last year with just an idea. A year later, they're publishing their app on our store and they're eligible for the $100,000 App Showdown. All right, what else can I talk about? I think we covered the Getting Started guide. We've talked about the documentation, the SDKs and tools that we provide. And then I think maybe the last bit is our API reference documentation. So our API is got quite a few entities. There's probably about 170 different endpoints. It's a pretty robust and complex API, and we try and break it down into transactions, name lists, reporting, and then support resources, just to make it a little bit easier. But you can jump into any of these, and you can follow over here and take a look at all the required fields, some of the business logic, all the details that you would need to know about this in order to use this particular endpoint is all listed inside our docs. And again, these are all just pure REST API and examples of it in REST, but we completely can help you with the SDKs. Using the SDKs will make your life a lot easier. But this is just giving you an example of what the API looks like, what the business logic is, what the sorting order is, what you can do for queries, any custom fields that are supported. Basically, lots of the nitty-gritty details that you might need to know about an endpoint.
Okay. So Jared, obviously, Intuit's a US company, but QuickBooks Online is global. So is there anything specific? So if I'm building an app just for UK small businesses, is there anything I should watch out for? Are there any parts of the API that, this one part of the API is a little bit regional. You need to pay attention to X. I'm thinking like sales tax probably, right?
Yeah,
or VAT
absolutely.
tax and similar entries.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually provide a couple of tutorials for managing tax for non-US companies. And as I mentioned before, your app can choose to connect to just UK companies, or you can connect to any of the 100+ countries that QuickBooks Online supports. And we have a few tutorials here on how to manage tax for non-US. If the tax model, the global tax, is enabled inside of QuickBooks Online, there's an entire tax model that you have to adhere to. And we cover it here in our tutorial, and we actually talk you through how to manage that with our APIs, from the tax codes, the tax rates, the tax agencies, how to specify sales tax. There's a lot of details in supporting global tax, and we try and make it as simple as possible for you. So I think that covers all the different tools. I'll just kind of recap them all. We have the API Explorer. You can try out any of our APIs inside of our developer portal without writing any code. We have code samples and SDKs in multiple programming languages. We have examples of CRUD operations for every single entity. We have Postman, which is a well-known HTTP client, and we have our own collections that'll definitely help you get up and going. We have the documentation, both for the API reference. We have tutorials on how to do complicated things like taxes. And then we also have QuickBooks Online sandboxes. As soon as you log in, you get a sandbox provision for you, but you can also go and create multiple different sandboxes, both in the US and Canada and the UK, Australia. You can create different country versions, and you can test those out as well. Okay. And then lastly, our OAuth playground lets you just get your OAuth tokens without actually having to write code, which is something you'll need to do for a hackathon. You just want to get up and going. You don't want to write all the OAuth code while you're here. So
I show up to the hackathon, or maybe it's the night before, and I've never even been to the Intuit developer site first. Like, what do I need to do? It's like, give me my 3-4 steps. Like, hey, create a developer account, then do what? I guess you have a page for it.
Sure. Okay. Head over to developer.intuit.com, go over to getting started, and we have 4 simple steps for you to get your development keys and get going. This will only take you, 2 minutes, and you'll be ready to start coding right after this.
Perfect. Got it. So, did you go into the payments API at all? Did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that. Okay. So in addition to QuickBooks Online, we also have a payment API, which allows you to charge a credit card and deposit the funds in a merchant account. And we provide the exact same experience and the same tools for this API as we do for QuickBooks Online. So get started, you can make API requests with API Explorer. We give you a sandbox for payments because obviously you don't want to charge your credit card while you're testing. So you can test completely against our sandbox. We also have the details on building your application. And this is a much simpler API than QuickBooks Online is. This is basically just how to actually charge a card. There really isn't much more to it than that.
So I have an app, whatever it might be. Maybe it's a field service app, and I'm out at the field and I'm fixing somebody's automobile, and I'm going to charge them. I can actually have the credit card fields in my app. And so this is the payments API that allows me to do that.
Absolutely. Okay. So from wherever you want, from your web app, from your mobile app, if you want to take a credit card from your customer, you can use this API to charge them, and the money will be deposited into the business's merchant account inside of QBO. And so here are the different resources that are available for that API. Basically, you can charge a card, you can charge a bank account, you can do an e-check, you can store cards in a wallet, and then this is the token. So obviously you don't store the real credit card, you actually get a token for it. But it's a pretty straightforward API. And
all those payment methods are supported in the UK?
No, this is just for US only.
Oh, okay.
So the payments API just works for US QBO and QuickBooks merchant services. You can use it, but it will only take US credit cards right now. Pretty soon, we will have a solution globally for payments, but right now we just have a US-based payments API.
Got it. Perfect. So what prizes is QuickBooks giving out at the Small Biz Hack?
Good point. I forgot about that. So if you choose to use the QuickBooks Online API in your hack, then you're eligible for our prize. And what we're giving away is the new Apple HomePod. And that just came out about a week ago. And I can actually show you what that looks like.
That's like the speaker thing, correct?
The speaker thing, it is. It's Apple's new, I won't call it a Amazon Alexa or a Google Home. It's sort of specifically tailored towards music. But it's actually pretty cool looking. It's a round, kind of a cone, and it comes with connectivity to Apple Play, and I think it might give you like a free trial of the music service. But I think it's based on Beats technology, but it's a really high quality speaker that syncs with iTunes and lets you play all of your music from there. I actually haven't tried it out yet. I just got them. They were just shipped because they were just released. But we have these as prizes, which I think will be pretty interesting. I don't think anyone's even seen them. I'm not even sure if they shipped to the UK yet, but we have four for our prize. So in addition to the main prize for the $5,000 you're eligible for, this is just an extra incentive to use our APIs in your hack. And so we'll be here the entire weekend to help you out. We'll be here to help you figure out, is this a good idea for a small business? How can you build that with the REST APIs? And then how can you ultimately, win the $5,000, 5,000 pounds.
5,000 pounds. But that's cool because I think I saw something that the HomePods weren't even available in the UK yet. So you might be able to get the first ones that are here at the Hackathon this weekend.
Yeah. Mine was shipped. I think we got it maybe 2 days before we left. So it's fresh off the Apple
assembly line.
Assembly line.
Cool. Perfect. No, thank you for coming on and showing us this. Is there any, obviously the QuickBooks API is big, right? Tons of things a business does, small business does, eventually gets into the accounting system, right? And you've been to a lot of hackathons. Can you give maybe an example of one of your favorite your favorite hacks you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So last hackathon we did was in San Jose for our QuickBooks Connect, and we did it in our own backyard. We did it in our building, building 20, right in the main hallway. And some of the things that developers came up with were amazing, but one really sticks out to me. They were using a couple of our API partners, Nexmo and Google Assistant, and they were kind of trying to solve a problem where a person who has a service-based business, maybe you're a landscaper, you're on the phone, you're talking to your customer, and you're discussing, the rates. You're discussing what it is that you need to do for this person. Cut the lawn, trim the bushes, plant a tree, all these different things that you might be doing. You're also discussing the price, and all the while using Nexmo in the background to capture that conversation. And as soon as you're done talking to that customer and you hang up, they applied some logic. They used Google's Assistant and some of the CUI frameworks that were available. They actually analyzed the conversation you just had and figured out all the different resources, the services and the costs that you were just discussing. And it was actually able to create an estimate for you right from what you had said on the phone. So you get done with your conversation, you hang up, you get a pop-up on your phone, and it would say, here's the estimate. It's $200 to mow the lawn. It's $300 for a brand new tree to be planted, and then monthly service fee of $100 to continue servicing. And it would pop up on your phone. You click OK, and it would send that information directly into QuickBooks, and you don't have to actually type out anything, which was amazing because you probably driving around as a service-based business. You're on the road constantly. You don't have time to stop and write up the estimate, write up the project, send it over to the customer. But this app that they built just does it all for you, just based on your speech. So that was just something that I thought was amazing, and I'd love to see that turn into a real application one day.
Yeah, I remember that pitch. It was very that after the fact processing of voice, which is a lot different than our current interactions with like Siri or Google Home or Amazon Alexa, which is I kind of feel like it's MS-DOS based. Like you need to know the right way to phrase it and then what to say next. And this was just natural language. And then after the fact, they'd process the conversation, which is just a different attack that nobody's taken before. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Have you been to any small businesses yet in London this trip?
I haven't yet. Last year we did when we were here. We went and visit lots of small businesses, and actually lots of our developers at the hackathon went and visited small business just to kind of get a feel for, what are the pain that they experience running their business, just to get some ideas for building out applications and trying to build a solution for them. So a lot of last year's hacks were based off of customer interaction.
Got it. And I definitely think there's I don't know the number of small businesses in the UK, but I think the latest numbers I saw for QuickBooks Online usage in the UK now, there's over 150,000 that now use QuickBooks Online in the UK. So just the QuickBooks Online users alone, there's 150,000 for you to try to solve problems for. But there's got to be millions of small businesses in the UK. So if you've ever interacted with a small business, call them up. Pop in, ask a family member that's a small business, like what kind of pains they're having, and those are some things you could solve. Imagine. Cool.
Yeah, that's part of Intuit's culture, design for delight and customer-driven innovation. We are what they like to call customer obsessed. And so everything we do is always with the customer in mind, and solving for them is kind of why we come to work every day.
Great. And on that note, I don't see any questions coming in. I think you covered everything pretty deeply for everybody. I guess we'll see everybody tomorrow morning. What time does it start again? Let me flip over there.
Don't forget the early bird prize.
Oh yeah, we have an early bird prize as well. So the first 25 people that show up here tomorrow get a Google Home. I guess technically it's a Google Home Mini. I don't want to create the wrong impression of
it's a Google Home Mini.
The wrong prize. The first 25 people that show up. It's not the first 25 teams. It's the first 25 people that show up in. I think I'm trying to check the schedule. It starts, doors open at 9 a.m. So I know last year people started queuing up before, but you want to be at Codenode in London. Doors open at 9 a.m. for the hackathon. Hopefully we'll see you guys here. Jared and I will be here. We're actually going to shut this down now and go set everything up for you guys. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll see you tomorrow morning. All right, bye.
See you tomorrow.